So I've just heard Inspector Lovelace describe the identity of the two individuals who apparently committed the stabbings on the train from Huntingdon to King's Cross last night. He described both of them as black, both of them as British nationals, both born in the United Kingdom, one of whom was of Caribbean descent, and he ruled out terrorism. And I think the impression he was trying to give in that description was that those of us who are concerned about the assault on our country by illegal migrants and other criminals who shouldn't be here needn't be concerned, that this is an entirely domestic British issue. But remember that after the killings in Southport, the brutal killings of those three young girls, Starmer described the perpetrator as a Welshman. Starmer indulged, in my view, undoubtedly indulged, in deflection. He wanted to give exactly the same impression that Lovelace has tried to give us this morning about the identity of these two men. Now, it's quite possible that they are, in every sense, British, but he didn't give us their names, and I will remain extremely suspicious until we get chapter and verse on who these two people are. It's almost inconceivable in my mind that this wasn't an act of terrorism. Why would you needlessly pull out knives and kill or seek to kill people, random people on a train? If that isn't terrorism, what the hell is? And this is the major point. Irrespective of the motives of the killers last night, the British people are now daily being assaulted, and significantly by people who shouldn't be in this country in the first place. We need a British political class that is prepared to call out those who commit crimes against the British people, to identify the root causes of those crimes and then deal with them. Not try and deflect from them, not try and diffuse the issue falsely just to move on to the next 24-hour news cycle in which we get even more bad news. We want this problem dealt with. And frankly, that starts with stopping the boats in our channels, detaining illegal migrants and deporting them, irrespective of the identity of the two people on the train last night. This government needs to wake up to the reality that British people are being assaulted needlessly now virtually every day. Get a grip, Starmer.
Ben Habib's statement uses the train stabbing incident not simply to question the police narrative, but to advance a broader political argument about crime, immigration, and what he sees as deliberate government deflection. His core claim is that officials like Inspector Lovelace and Keir Starmer strategically frame violent incidents as domestic British crime in order to downplay the role of immigration and avoid public backlash over border policy. By pointing to the Southport killings and the labeling of the suspect as a Welshman, Habib argues that political leaders are intentionally sanitizing the public understanding of crime by refusing to disclose full identities or motives. He escalates the framing by suggesting the stabbings should be treated as terrorism and that the refusal to classify them as such is part of a wider pattern of narrative control. The real purpose of his message is not limited to this one crime, but to reinforce a worldview in which the British public is under daily threat from people who shouldn't be in the country, and where the government and police are complicit through avoidance and euphemism. His solution, stop the boats, detain, deport, turns a single incident into a broader indictment of immigration policy, presenting border control not as a policy debate, but as the front line of national self-defense. Whether one agrees with him or not, the rhetorical move is clear. Recast a specific crime into evidence of systemic failure, accuse the political establishment of deception, and position immigration as the central security threat facing Britain today.
With regard to terrorism, I mean, in a nutshell, it needs to be acts which are planned to get a response or make government change their policy. So it's generally politically motivated and around government related actions.
Okay, and now people are saying, well, I'm terrorised by this. I feel terror now. I don't want to have to be scared getting on a train. I mean, that is obviously not the official definition of terrorism, but many people are saying, I am terrorised.
No, and that's been raised before, the feeling that it invokes in people. But an act of terrorism against the state, against the country, against the government is defined, as I said, or in a nutshell, is around trying to get the government to change policy or influence their policy.
And Kevin, are you surprised? I mean, the police press conference today said there is nothing to suggest terrorism is involved in this incident. Are you surprised they came to that conclusion so quickly?
I'm not, because as it unfolded last night, and we have to bear in mind that only the senior national coordinator within counter-terrorism policing can declare a terrorist incident, and that is not done lightly. That is based on that officer getting all the briefings, all the information, what's been said at the scene, what's been recovered, all the evidence available before that would be declared. So the more time went on, I wasn't surprised that it's not being looked at terrorism related.
And what would be the process to discover what had gone on and what were the reasons behind it in the 12 hours, certainly less than 24 hours that we've had?
Yeah, I think before I answer that, I would just like to go back to what some other people have said as well, and we really shouldn't underestimate the difference of the actions of the emergency services and the train driver as well, and potentially the rail network. The actions they played probably saved lives, certainly in serious injury. So we've been going. It's not terrorist, but it's probably just worth mentioning that since a failed attack in 2015 in France, the authorities, the emergency services, have been practicing, exercising this type of scenario, which is borne out by the fact that it's been mentioned the train was stopped at an unscheduled stop, and the coordination to get resources there and to have one person in charge of the firearms operation is pretty good with regard to the time that's taken to bring these people into custody. So
just talk me through the process that would have happened when the police were first alerted to this incident. How would they have decided what the fact that it was nothing to suggest terrorism involved? Talk me through the process, how they would have reached that conclusion.
Yeah, I think originally, I believe Operation Plato was called. So based on the facts, the person or the officer, senior officer within the control room would have made that decision that it could well be terrorist, and I don't think anyone will blame them for that because of the information that was available. So, hence, I believe Operation Plato was called, which then brings into play a number of resources and actions. Moving on from that, when the firearms officers have arrived and detained the suspects, and Mark White was just talking about it, what would have happened was there would have been a quick debrief, not necessarily a full statement, but a debrief of the passengers as to what they saw. Obviously, once everyone's known to be safe, so they would have been spoken to. The CCTV would have been examined. I'm unsure whether the driver and or the guard would have had access to see what was going on in carriages that they weren't actually in, and then a determination made based on those eyewitnesses, what was said by the people. Bearing in mind that we don't know the people involved at the moment, as in the victims. So, but they would have been key as to why this started in the first place. And once that's been ascertained, that decision as to why this isn't being investigated as terrorism would be made.
And Kevin, we have seen an increase recently of terror attacks on transport throughout Europe. How worried should we be? I mean, putting aside the fact that this one is, as far as we're aware at the moment, not terrorism, how worried should we be about terrorism on our public transport networks? Obviously, in the UK, everyone thinks about the 7/7 central London bombings from 20 years ago now, 2005. How worried should we be?
I think I would rather look at it as be alert to the possibility. The chances of it actually happening are extremely rare, but people do get caught up in it. The current threat level is based around the fact that an attack is likely. The chance of being caught up in one, extremely rare. There is good advice out there from government websites and the like, and what the people did last night, whether it be on a train, whether it be in a shopping centre, there is advice around run, hide and tell. So people should get themselves out of the way, hide if at all possible, and obviously the tell part is alert the authorities, which happened on this occasion. But going back to your question, I think people should be more alert to the fact that it can happen, rather than worry that they will be caught up in it.